Hey, what's up guys? My name is Nicholas Corcel and you're watching Literary Nomad. Today I'm going to be talking about Featherweight, a story by Sterling HolyWhiteMountain, who, in my opinion, is one of the best rising authors in the United States. Featherweight is the first story I've ever read by Sterling HolyWhiteMountain, who is a graduate of the Iowa Writers Workshop MFA program, which is widely regarded as the best and most prestigious MFA in the world, as well as a current fellow and lecturer at Stanford University. So needless to say, his academic credentials are as good as they could possibly be, and luckily, his writing is equally as good. The story itself is very simple. At its core, it's a love story. A love story between two native kids attending university, falling in love or obsessive lust, and not really knowing the difference as they navigate their lives and make sense of the confusing world around them. Allie, referred at first to as the main character's love, and I think it's important that she's characterized first by how she is the main character's love rather than as her own entity, is a very, very smart native girl who is doing very well at university. She's on many levels appeared to have adjusted better than the narrator. She's like a rising star at the university. Professors have singled her out for an academic career, and she's expected to do very great things for herself. And Allie, as she's described, is almost placed as a object of contrast against the white girls that the narrator has been having sex with throughout the beginning of his college career. These white girls are described as having downy beds, and their homes and bedrooms are described almost angelic, like angelic palaces. And the beds are described in a way that invokes imagery of clouds, and it almost makes you think of them as angels or direct descendants of God. Allie, on the other hand, is the total opposite of this. Her living accommodations is much more typical of a poor, low-income university student. Everything in her apartment is bare bones, and she just has what she needs to survive and go to school. If you've ever attended university, particularly a nice university or at least a prestigious one, as a low-income student, you see this constant contrast. I know I saw it when I attended university. You'll have these rich kids who are living in like homes that are nicer than the homes you grew up in, and this is their version of slumming it, while you are living a very bare bones existence yourself. You are eating ramen noodles, you're doing all of the things that you hear being romanticized as the typical college experience. But then you realize that the people making these myths, making up this idea of the college experience, aren't actually living it themselves. And the story kind of plays with this idea. It's not central to the plot whatsoever, but behind the scenes, you can see this idea being played with a lot, and that was something I really enjoyed and resonated with in the story. Further, I would say that this story succeeds in two major ways. The first being that it's smart and thoughtful without being overly academic or preachy. It makes you think critically without annoying you or making you feel dumb or like you are an outsider in this like educated club. I think that's a major problem with a lot of modern literary fiction, especially authors such as George Saunders, for example, who I think he, of course, is very talented. But sometimes the books feel like, you're lesser than or that you're dumb if you don't understand all the references and things like that. I think that is an area that Sterling HolyWhiteMountain really succeeds in. He makes the everyday person feel actively engaged in this highly intellectual discourse, and I think that is an incredible feat. I think it's very difficult to do, but he does it well. The second major way that this story succeeds, and in my opinion, this is by far the biggest success of this story and why I really enjoy him as a writer, is just the strength and the sheer force that is behind his prose and the pure just technical quality of his writing. In all honesty, from a craft standpoint, this work is nothing short of remarkable. The characters criticize the state of modern America and provide a commentary on what it is like to be native in this ever-changing and increasingly controversial modern world. These complex feelings and emotions are grappled with in a playful tone that is both thought-provoking and incredibly, and intentionally, I would say, ambiguous. You don't really know what side the characters lie on, and you also don't know if they're right at all times. A lot of stories will take the approach, if they're trying to, advocate for their community, that everything they say is correct, but that's not the case at all in this story, right? The native characters are well-rounded. They have ideas that I agree with. They have ideas that I think most people would disagree with. They say things that are both universal truths and objectively bad. And that makes those universal truths more realistic, in my opinion. Like, if you have a character who is just speaking down on everybody else, like they are just some higher power that is almost omniscient or all-knowing, then it takes away from the great points that they make. But if you make a real person, a person who has these amazing ideas but also has things you don't agree with, then you get a really compelling character. And when you look into history, right? The people that most resonate with the most, your Martin Luther Kings, your Malcolm X's, they're not monolithically perfect or monolithically right. They're certainly not omniscient. They have points that are excellent and true, and they've shaped the modern world. But then they also say things that make you think, "Oh wow, what are you talking about? That's crazy." And this story articulates that beautifully. Continuing on from a craft standpoint, Featherweight has just this edginess to it that is incredibly rare, right? A lot of stories will try to be edgy, and usually when a writer who is not as talented as Sterling HolyWhiteMountain tries to be edgy, it comes off very cringe-like, and this story really doesn't feel like that at all. Even the formatting of his dialogue is unique and just makes the whole story just feel cool, and it feels like it belongs in a magazine that would be cool. I could totally see a piece like this appearing in like the Playboy literary magazine back when those were a big thing, and it's a real shame that we don't really have a modern equivalent of that. Of course, it was published in the New Yorker, which is an excellent and probably the best literary magazine, but I wish that we had a dedicated literary space where like cool and up-and-coming work would be published, because I think something like this would fit absolutely perfectly in that. To illustrate just how unique and cool and just overall great his prose is, I'm going to read a quick excerpt from the story. The other day in a used bookstore, I saw a spine that caused me to recall her desk that somehow withstood those tremendous tomes: indigenous post-colonial theory, tribal nation building, the United States Supreme Court, and the creation of Indian country. I marveled again at the slim legs of that lovely desk. How much dignity they took on under the weight of those titles. She had published a paper the year before about the coming death of tribal sovereignty in the age of racialization. Now she was wanted for these panels. There was another paper to research and write and publish. Her profs talking how she might build her academic career. One night, after getting yet another conference invitation, she flopped down on the mattress next to me and pressed her palms into her tired eyeballs. "I just want to scream," she said. I didn't say anything. I'm certain I was practicing my active listening skills. "I fucking hate this," she said. "I don't want to spend the rest of my life talking to white people about Indians. Excuse me, I mean the indigenous peoples of North America." She made a face and said it in this snarky tone. She was always talking about social justice terms. None of them belonged to us. It seemed we would never get to speak for ourselves about the things we wanted to talk about in the way we wanted to talk about them. "There will be no justice for us in this life or any other," she said. "That's fucking depressing," I said. "No," she said. "What's depressing is learning there's almost nothing you can do about what you've learned." "What if we made out?" I said. "You know what you are," she said. "You're one of those smart people who like being dumb." I pulled her to me and kissed her anyway. She was delicate and slender in my arms, yet even as I held her, she remained elusive. Sometimes I had to search for her, had to make sure she had not faded out like a photo left too long in the sun. One night, she said, "This doesn't qualify as a sustainability practice. I've been known to break things." "The Romantics," I said, "believe love transcends space and time." "Writers," she said. For me, the biggest takeaway of this passage and really the whole story is how very real ideas can be juxtaposed with just a playful tone of two young kids that are in love, right? In real life, these people wouldn't just be sitting in a room talking and having like an academic debate, which a lot of stories, that's the approach they would take. Instead, people, even smart people, would play off of each other. They would make jokes. There would be sexual tension between these two young lovers, and they would still be talking about the things that are important to them, but it wouldn't dominate them, and it certainly wouldn't be done with an academic tone. And I think that that is where this story really pulls ahead of the pack. I think that's why you should absolutely read it. And of course, I've linked it in the description box below. In the end, however, their romance ends how most university flings do, with termination. Allie gives up on pursuing a traditional career, particularly in the academic sense, and moves back into the reservation with her cousin. Within a few weeks, the narrator hears that she's flipping burgers in some nameless diner back around where she lives. And with this, the main character just rides buses around the city, looks at these towns and houses where mostly white people live, and kind of makes them out into being like an ivory tower, so to speak. And he imagines that nobody like him has ever crossed the threshold. They've never stepped into these ivory towers, and he wonders what that life might be. And thus, his life continues. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. My name is Nicholas Corcel, and I thank you very much for watching.